3 News Now Web Extra.
22 years ago last night, 2,606 people went to bed preparing for work the next day. 343 firefighters, 60 police officers, 8 paramedics went to bed preparing for their shift the next morning. And none of those people survived this time today, 22 years ago. Like for many of us, September 11th feels like it was yesterday. Some of us know 9/11 from history books, some of us know from personal experience. Many of us remember exactly where we were that day when the towers were struck and when the Pentagon was hit. Those of us who are old enough remember in detail where we were. For me, on September 11th, 2001, I just started working as an assistant district attorney in New York City. It was on my second week of work. I'd graduated law school that May, backpacked around Europe for 6 weeks with no phone, just a book on how to survive Europe on $10 a day. And I came back and I started my job. And I was living in Brooklyn with 4 roommates. They were actors. We had a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. And that day, September 11th, I got up, like most people sort of in the outer boroughs, and got on the subway and came into the city. And I got out of the subway at the Brooklyn Bridge subway stop, and it was about 8:50. And I got out, had about 10 minutes to get to work for train. We were in training and you couldn't be late, but no one was moving. Everyone was just standing looking up. So I stood and I looked up too. And the World Trade Center was a few blocks away, and the North Tower was on fire, and papers raining down everywhere, like little bits of confetti, office papers raining down everywhere. And I asked someone what happened, and they said the North Tower got struck by a plane. And I thought, well, that is a tragic aviation accident. And we're standing there watching it, and a few minutes later, I think 9:03, I saw the second plane, United Flight 175, come shooting straight at the second tower and struck it. And the tower erupted in flames. The plane entered the building and erupted in flames. And at that moment, all 60 passengers on that plane were killed. Everyone on those floors was killed, and the hundreds and hundreds of people trapped above had no way out. And I remember at that moment it struck. If you had asked me, I would have said, well, that was some kind of, the way the lighting was, the sun was, I would have said that was some kind of military plane. I thought it was an attack. I thought it was some kind of plane from another country. I had no idea at the time that it was a U.S. passenger jet filled with passengers, just going about their business. And so I'd served as a firefighter before, so I said, well, let me run over, maybe I can help for a few hours. And I had a coworker there, and I gave him my tie and my bag and my jacket. I said, hey, would you mind taking this to the office for me? I might be gone for a few hours, but then I'll be back. So I ran over, and we were carrying the injured from the tower and the towers and laying them out in this area so we're free from where the glass was falling. And some people were coming out we were carrying were horrifically injured, blood streaming down their face, visible injuries. Others were fine, just dusty or dirty or sweaty, but didn't appear to be injured. And we were laying them out. At one point we went down to the subway at the World Trade Center, and there were a few people there. We put on stretchers and carried up. And I remember thinking at the time, I was getting blood on my shirt, and I thought, well, I have to go to work after this, so what am I going to do? Do I go back home? Can I take the subway? How late can I be for training? Just really no idea the magnitude of what was about to happen. And then around 9:59 that morning, you just felt something was happening. And you look up, and the South Tower is beginning to pancake down. You could see it. It was right above us. It was coming straight down, layer by layer. And, we all began to run and quickly realized couldn't get away. There's a tsunami of dust and debris and smoke coming after you that you couldn't get away from. So I, like everyone there who was sort of at this triage site, I just jumped underneath the car, underneath the trunk. I was overcome by this smoke and this debris, and I couldn't breathe for a while. It felt like drowning in like a bag of flour. And it got very dark, black dark, and got very quiet. The plumes sort of suffocated all sound. And then at some point I thought, well, I can't stay here. I can't breathe. So I got up and I started walking. Couldn't see anything. I bumped into someone else So we grabbed onto each other, and we just kept walking, and we found our way to a building, and found a door just by feel, and went inside, and it was a little better in there, a little lighter, and caught my breath, went back out, and I spent the next sort of 45 minutes or so sort of joining up with a firefighter and 2 police officers looking for victims, and it was a war zone. Every vehicle there was destroyed, every building was destroyed, everything was on fire, and we didn't find any living victims. And then about 10:28 that morning, heard like a roar overhead, and couldn't see anything. We thought it was another plane, thought it was another jet plane coming down. We ran for cover, but it wasn't. It was the North Tower coming down, and there was sort of a wrecked fire department utility vehicle there. The back doors open, and so I jumped in the back of that, and same as before, although this time I sort of knew what was coming, which made it worse, just filled with smoke and debris and couldn't breathe. But the vehicle was filled with air canisters. It was like a utility vehicle with a fire department. So I grabbed one and cranked that open, put my mouth on it, and breathed for a little while, and eventually came outside. And it was a wasteland of just everything was on fire. And made it down to the fire station. There's a fire station, engine company, ladder company number 10 right there it's on Liberty Street, right across from World Trade Center. And I went down there, and it had survived, and there was a retired chief there, and I said, hey, can I help? I used to be a firefighter, and he gave me some bunker gear. And I spent the day, we spent the day putting out fires, looking for victims, and didn't find anyone alive the entire day. And that night, 2 Port Authority police officers were found, and they were, I think they were found first around 5 or 6, and they were buried deep in the rubble. And so I was part of the first crew out there to help try to dig them out. And I remember going out to where they were. It took a long time to get to where they were. The entire pile's on fire. Things are shifting. You're kind of going up and down mountains of rubble. I remember that one of the officers, his firearm being passed up. And I remember the firefighters and police officers I was with sort of radioing for equipment. There's things they wanted. They wanted IV bags, wanted saws, and things weren't always coming. And at some point that night, I thought, well, by now there's more than enough people here with, much more training than I. And so I thought, well, I'll go home and I'll come back tomorrow. So I walked back out of the pile, and I remember it took me a long time to get to where these 2 officers were buried, and they were both pulled out alive. But it took me a long time to get to where they were, and I really had to climb like on my hands and, and knees and feet. On the way out, there's such a long line of first responders, firefighters, police officers. Like I didn't have to put my hand on once. I just took, gloved hand after gloved hand. And along the way, I would see equipment that had sort of been passed up, but at some point it got to someone didn't know why they were handed something, and they were busy doing something else, putting out a fire somewhere, and it got put down. And things that the officers and firefighters were requesting where these 2 officers were buried. And I walked out of the site, and there's a place where they had doctors that set up sort of mobile emergency rooms, doctors and nurses and paramedics, with beds set out, and they were treating no one. There really were no victims found. And so, I had to go back to Brooklyn where I came in, and the subways were running. I was told, someone said, well, they're running up above 14th Street. So I walked up to Union Square, and I swiped my card, and I got on the subway and took it back to Brooklyn. And people were staring at me on the subway because I was covered with dust, and I went home. And I fully planned. I said, all right, well, I'm going to come back tomorrow. And but I woke up in the middle of the night with my eyes were swollen shut. I couldn't see anything. So I didn't know what had happened, but I couldn't see anything. So there's a friend staying with me, and she walked me to there's an emergency room just right down the street. So we walked down there, and she walked me down there, and it turned out I had severe corneal abrasions, like from the debris. And for like weeks, the ophthalmologists were pulling out like cinders from my eyelids. So I was fine. I recovered fine, but I couldn't see for about a week and sort of laid at home. And 3 years later, I applied to join the FBI. And I remember at the FBI, and I joined the FBI, and I remember I was at the FBI Academy, and in our international terrorism course or class, they were playing a video about 9/11, and one of the pictures they showed was a picture of me. Like I knew it because I had seen the picture. I don't think no one else in my class it was our second day, I think, or first day. No one else recognized it, but I knew it was me. And then they asked afterwards, hey, was anyone here, present at the World Trade Center or the Pentagon or in Shanksville? And, so I raised my hand, and I'd never ever spoken about this publicly before. And so the instructor was like, well, tell us, what happened. And I started, and I just, I couldn't talk about it. I never at that point ever spoken about it in front of people. But I remember I graduated, and I sent to the New York field office, where every day I drove by, took the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel and drove right by the site. And what I remember most about that day is I remember sort of those times being in the dark and, making all those promises we all can make when we think we're not going to make it. You think, well, I'm not going to make it out of this. So if I can make it out of this is how I'm going to change, this is how I'm going to be better. All these promises we can make about our lives that sometimes we don't always do the best job of keeping once the emergency is passed. But one thing I remember was throughout that day, the U.S. jets would keep flying overhead, but it was dark. You couldn't see anything. So every time we thought, all the firefighters I was with, we thought it was another, plane coming in or another tower coming down. Every time we would bolt, dive under something for cover. And I remember thinking, like, why doesn't someone do something about this, right? This is the United States of America. Why isn't someone stopping these planes? And of course, now I realize that, that somebody is us. Every one of us here in the FBI and law enforcement whose job to this day, 22 years later, is to stand point protecting the homeland from terrorist attack. And I found myself in the 8th anniversary of 9/11 in Afghanistan, responding to terrorist attacks in Kabul, trying to find those links that could help stop an attack here in the U.S. I found myself in the 10th anniversary, working at our counterterrorism division in headquarters. And I remember in the days of following those attacks, I couldn't see for a few days. So I asked my roommates, I said, can you save all the newspapers? Because I couldn't read them. And so they saved them. So I had a big stack, and I put these newspapers in a box with, I'd taken everything I was wearing that day when I got home and took a shower, put everything I had in just a big trash bag and tied it up. And I put them in a box with all those clothes and these newspapers. And, I sealed that box up, and I'm sure it's full of carcinogens. And I moved that box to, moved it to Washington, D.C., and Savannah, Georgia, and Los Angeles, and here it sits in Omaha. I never opened it. I always put it sort of in the farthest attic or garage or basement area I can. I'm sure someday I'll throw it away, but just not ready to do that yet.